Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. Back here again. Hope you all had a fantastic week, and a lot has happened. I'm sure for everybody, it's kind of a busy but not busy time of year over this past week. But I know it was a great week for me. I hope it was I hope it was a great week for all of you as well. And I have a really exciting interview for you all today. Really excited to learn about this. Actually, this is kind of something I've been doing on the podcast here, not chatting too much with people about what they do before we start the interview, because I like to learn as we go and then have the questions that I ask people be that much more organic. So, and this is another case. I know enough to be dangerous about this guest, but I don't know everything. I'm excited to get into this conversation with you all because I already know from the people that connected me with her that she's going to have some real impactful information for all of us trying to fulfill our true purpose in life out there. So without further ado, I am so pleased to be joined on this episode by KateLyn Costa of Breathe with KateLyn. And she is a trauma-informed breathwork guide and coach who's also currently working on finishing up her last years of a master's in social work with the intention to become a licensed therapist. In her words, I have tried all kinds of modalities, healing arts, therapies, and where I've landed is breathwork. Why? Because after my first breathwork session, say that 5 times fast, I was able to finally come home to myself. I felt peace like never before. I felt safe in my body. I felt a deep sense of trust and harmony. Breathwork changed my experience of myself and life in one session. Holy cow, KateLyn, that's awesome. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure, and I so appreciate it. So thank you. I'm excited.
Of course, I am as well. And just that was just only one section of her bio, everybody. So I'm really excited to dig in this conversation because there's a lot to unpack just in that section. But tell us a little bit about what led you to that first session of breath work that was so impactful for you. And it was clearly incredibly impactful for you because now you do it. It's something you coach people through it and help people with. So talk to
Sure.
us a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think like so many of us, I kind of fell into it, and it was almost like my life was leading up to this moment. And it was that aha moment where I was like, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And just to give you a little background, I dealt with, like so many people do, extreme anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety in my early 20s. I really lacked a lot of purpose, right? We're talking purpose. Lacked a lot of purpose. So much discontent, a lot of fear. I lived in fear. I lived in fear that people were going to leave me, that, I wasn't lovable, a lot of self-loathing. I went through a really bad period of my life where had an eating disorder. And through all of that, I struggled a lot, right? So I was struggling a lot, and I traveled. Then I started traveling. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go travel. I'm going to go find myself, which was beautiful and wonderful. And I did do a lot of amazing things, and I did a lot of meditation. And I, at one point, did yoga, and I got my yoga certification, which I really loved. And actually got introduced a little bit to breath work, but it didn't, at that point, not the kind of really full thing that I'm in right now. And what happened was, I thought I was going to find myself when I traveled. It's kind of like the Eat, Pray. I basically was like Eat, Pray, Love. If everybody else watched that or read that, I was like, actually Eat, Pray, Love. I'm like in Bali, like crying my eyes out, And I came home and I met my husband, who I'm married to now. And I thought, okay, now, and I started going to school, and I was like, now I'm going to be happy. And even though we had a beautiful, wonderful relationship, I was still so unhappy. And I was like, okay, what is going on? Like, I don't understand. Why do I feel so discontent? Why do I feel so much anxiety? So one of my friends one day was like, I think you should do breath work. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. Because I'm always down for anything. I'm like, sure. So I did a breathwork session, and it was on Zoom. And I cried that whole session, and I felt like I found like my heart again. And it is hard to describe. People are always like, what is breath work? And I'm like, I'll try to describe it to you, but you just have to feel it. Because I felt so connected to myself. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off of my shoulders.
Mm.
And that really spurred me and put me into, like, I had done, like I said in my bio, I'd done so many modalities and therapy, and those all have been wonderful.
Mm.
When I did breath work, it was like, you know, years and years and years of trauma and sadness and anxiety and all that, just poof, it was like lifted. And
Wow.
then the more and more and more and more I've done it, the more I feel more free and more like myself, and like I'm able to be connected to myself and love myself. So that's sort of how I got into it. And of course,
Mm.
after that session, I mean, I honestly think the next cohort that was coming up was like 3 months down the road. So I started getting into breath work, and then like about a month later, and probably not even, I was like, I'm signing up for this. Because I just knew I always wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. And
Mm.
when I had such a profound experience, I knew, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. That's incredible. And I think everyone, well, I hope everyone in their life has had one of those moments where they're like, whatever it is, it might not necessarily be their career. It might not necessarily be, um, something that absolutely altered the path of their life in a way that they might say saved their life or something. But everyone has at least had an inkling of a moment where it's like, this is it. Whatever,
Yeah.
whether that's a hobby or something. And if you haven't out there, keep looking, because it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
It is an amazing feeling. Um, well, that's incredible, KateLyn. So the one question that kind of pops into my mind first is, was it this discovery of breath work that has then led you to wanting to become a licensed therapist, to use this to even further help people? Or was that always sort of a passion of yours as well? You just found the breath work first, and that kind of allowed you to get to a point where you're like, okay, I want to become a licensed therapist? Because as you said in that incredible story you just shared with us, there was a time there where you were just, you were eat, pray, loving, and and not getting out of it what Julia Roberts did. Um,
You're right.
but so what was, because obviously you're going to continue to use that breath work even when you become a
Yeah.
licensed therapist. I think that's going to be incredibly impactful for the people that you work with. So talk a little bit about what is now leading you down that path of getting your master's and becoming a licensed therapist as your next goal.
Yeah, so actually it was the other way around.
Mm.
So when I was in my last place that I was actually teaching English. It was partly what I was traveling as well.
Mm.
And I was in Japan, and I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do next when I come home? I don't know what to do. So I had applied to get my master's in social work, because at that point I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll be a therapist because I really want to help people, and therapy has helped me a lot. Right? So I want to help people. So I thought, well, this is obvious the path that I'm going to do. And then 2 years, 2 years, yeah, 2 years into that, or a year into it, sorry, a year into that, that's when I found breathwork. And
Mm.
so it's been a very interesting path, because not that I love therapy, obviously.
Yeah.
Everybody go to therapy. It's so great. Everybody should have a therapist. And what I discovered through breathwork was the somatic work, right? So that somatics is a word that's being thrown out there in the world a lot, right? Soma, working with the body.
Yeah.
And they're actually, what I'm really excited about, and I never could have guessed this when I first applied to go to school, was that I would have this modality, breath work, that I can now marry with therapy.
Yeah.
Because, they talk about top down processing, you got your CBT, you've got, just your verbal processing, of course, then your bottom up processing. And the new research, if you've ever read The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, he's really big in the trauma world and the body somatic world.
Mm.
And he talks about how trauma and a lot of our emotions get stuck in our bodies, right? And our bodies get stuck in overdrive. When we have a traumatic experience, we have this trauma response, and we get stuck in that fight or flight. And that tells our minds that we're not safe. And then it tells our bodies we're not safe. And it's this like loop, right?
Mm.
So it's very hard to break that loop just by thinking ourselves out of it. So
Mm.
when you use the body work and you tell your body, I'm safe, you go into that rest state, then you can easier work with the mind and do the top down, do the mind work, the talking, the talk therapy.
Mm.
And that combination together is a beautiful combination. And I'm really excited where the world is going with this, because this is very new, and it's
Mm.
also a very hot topic. And so it actually happened by accident. And I just had decided to go to school to become a therapist first, and then I found breathwork, and I thought to myself, okay, how do I put this together now? Like, how do I do this? So it's exciting. It's very exciting to see how that will be in the future.
Yeah, that's no, that's fantastic. I mean, what a happy little accident there, right?
Yeah.
You're already on one path that you found so impactful to help people. And the other thing I really love about this too, and that I think um, sometimes can get lost on people a little bit in certain industries, anyways, the idea that both of these things were things that you personally experienced and was enough of an impact on you to then want to go do that as your thing, right?
Yeah.
Therapy was impactful for you, and so you want to become a therapist. You found
Yeah.
breath work, it was so incredibly impactful for you that now you're incorporating that, and you're going to marry the two together and help a lot of people. And I think sometimes people think like, well, why would anyone else get anything out of what I've found impactful? Like, I can't do that, someone else,
Right.
I think we tend to not value how sharing that impact that we felt with others can actually significantly help other people. So I think that's a great take home from your story here too.
Totally. I love that you just brought that up, because I've always been a sharer. I love sharing. I've never been like nervous to share my feelings. And what I noticed over the years was that as I shared, I did a lot of blogging at one point, and so many people would say, "Oh my gosh, I feel that way too. Thank you for saying that." And I'm like, "Huh?" And so at first it kind of surprised me, right? Just like you were saying, you're like, "Oh, if I'm just having this experience, but maybe not anybody else is having this experience, or it's impactful for me, but it might not be impactful for somebody else."
Mm,
What I realized is that humans are so similar. We're so different, but so similar too,
yeah.
right? And if you're having an experience,
Mm,
probably somebody else is as well.
yeah.
And that, I love that about group healing as well. When you go into these groups where you're talking with people, or masterminds, or even when you have a really close knit group of friends, and you start to share what's really going on inside of your heart and your
Mm,
soul and your mind, I assure you somebody else is as well. And just sharing that and being able to to know that somebody else is going through it is
mm.
so comforting.
For sure. It kind of goes back to, maybe some of our elementary and middle school teachers were right. Like, someone else might have the same question. So go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar concept, just on a different level. No, that's fantastic. So the other thing that kind of comes to my mind with this too is, you did dive a little bit into some of that fight or flight response, which
Yeah.
I think probably has a lot to do with why this breath works so well. So talk a little bit about how someone might be able to recognize if they're in that sort of pattern as kind of an
Mm.
indicator that breath work might be impactful for whatever I guess I'll call it, symptoms they might be feeling, whether it be anxiety, depression, panic attacks. So, it, and,
Sure.
and it might not be, maybe the answer is it's not always classified as things like that.
Yeah.
So what are some of the signs that someone's in this sort of hyperdrive, this somatic hyperdrive, and that breath work might actually work to get them out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So I love this question. And I'll just say before, of course, so our bodies are so smart, and they're always talking to each ourselves, and or to us. And so some of the things that may be happening are anxiety, like you said,
Mhm.
and maybe depression, maybe sometimes stomach problems,
Mm,
maybe insomnia, maybe a feeling of, like, I don't know if you've ever felt like that, like you feel like people describe it different, but like your mind feels like it's going zing, like kind of, it's just like you have so much in your mind that it kind of feels like it's zinging.
like a
A little,
vibration, or
like a vibration. Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of people have like back pain, lower back pain,
Mm,
or any aches and pains in their bodies, really. And sometimes, like, if you notice that your shoulders are coming up a lot, that can be a sign. So headaches. So there's, and I would say in most generally, anxiety is probably one of the biggest ones because our body is in hyper like overdrive. But it really can affect our bodies emotionally
Mm.
and physically. It can also make us, some people end up going into this like overdrive, and some people end up going into a deep depression, depending, because your body is like, okay, I can't handle this, right?
Right.
And what I wanted to say is, of course, if you're having these symptoms, it doesn't always mean that like breath work's the only answer. We have to be careful, right? Like, please make sure you're going to your doctor and you're, getting your checkups, because you don't know, what's going on in your body. Our bodies are amazing.
Mm.
And at the same time, so much of the time it is stress,
Mm.
because that chronic stress, like even if like not even talking about trauma, just talking about the everyday stress. I mean,
Mm.
I know I heard you have kids, right? So you've got your kids and you're trying to get dinner on the table and you're going to the grocery store and somebody's texting you and you've
Yeah.
got business meetings and you got a client and somebody canceled and you're trying to make the bills, da 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 da, and it never ends. So this overdrive of exactly like
Yeah.
you just
Right.
want to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And you'll notice, like, if you start to notice your body, you'll start to notice, like, oh, I'm not even breathing, or, oh, I'm tensing here, or, oh, my shoulders are up, or, like, I feel lethargic, or
Mm.
I'm so in overdrive, I can't even sleep at night because my mind's going a million hours. And those are the kinds of things that I would look for. And the other thing is the emotional aspect of like when you feel so stressed or
Yeah.
you've had a lot of traumatic experiences, one thing that the body does to keep it safe is dissociate. So
Mm.
you actually feel like you're dissociated from your body. You're not actually living in your body, which makes it extremely hard to be present.
Mm.
And this is something that happened to me. I became so dissociated from my body because I was had so much stuff unresolved issues at
Mm.
that point that I was not listening to my body's cues. Right. And then it was like that for me that developed into an eating disorder and major insomnia.
Mm.
Right. So it looks different for everybody.
Sure.
But I know you talk a lot on this show about like prevention, right? And I think breath work is this beautiful step where it's like, okay, let's calm down, let's take a moment, let's get
Mm.
into our bodies, let's find a safe space, because that's the other thing, like finding a safe space and
Mm.
starting to tell yourself, I'm safe in my body, it's going to be okay,
Yeah.
and allowing yourself to let yourself guard your guard down. And by doing that and training your body to go more into rest, so
Mm.
many of these issues that we have can go away.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I'm really glad you brought up the point about prevention, because as you were talking about this, it really occurred to me like, okay, this is probably a cluster of things, right? There's probably not one thing.
Yeah.
If you do have anxiety alone without some of the other things that you mentioned, could accompany it, sure, that can work. I mean, heck, even if you feel like I'm not an anxious person, I don't have crazy high stress levels, but I have back pain. I think breath work can help that back pain simply because of what it does
Absolutely.
to our nervous system and actually what it does to the physiological structures that can affect back pain. It's not going to be the cure at all. That's a very uh, multifactorial thing that we need to approach, but
Yeah.
it's certainly going to help. Um, but the other place my mind goes there is, yeah, it's usually like a cluster of symptoms, but the prevention thing, much like what I do, I tell everyone I work with this: the things that we can do to treat what you have going on, essentially, that, like we just talked about, that cluster of things that might indicate that breath work is going to be impactful for people, eventually can turn into prevention. Or if you maybe only have one thing, or it's a brand new thing, like maybe this level of anxiety is brand new for you and you've never
Mm.
felt it this constantly before, I'm guessing that even as soon as you feel that way, or even if you can feel that bubbling in the background, like you wouldn't say I have anxiety yet, but you're like, I feel something coming here. Because I think all of us can attest to
Yeah.
having felt that before, like before
Yeah.
the calm before the storm, so to speak. You can almost feel it
Yes.
coming before it boils over. That can probably be a good time to actually institute this as prevention, because if you can get in a practice of this a little bit,
Yes. Yes.
um well, you brought up like my children, like if it's your first kid or it's your first time having a second kid, which I guess it's always your first time having a second kid, but once you get beyond two, I guess it's like, yeah, well, whatever. But but even using this as a way to work some prevention into your system before some new major thing gets thrown at you that is kind of coming down the road, so to speak. Uh, I'm guessing that can be quite impactful here.
So impactful. And I love that you brought up kind of, working maybe with multiple modalities, because
Mm-hmm.
that I think we all need that, right? We
Yeah.
all need, we need this then, and, different things in all times, and depending
Right.
on, the severity of what's going on. And you bring up a great point. So breath work, I mentioned before the pause,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you have a practice, like you said, of breath work, when you start taking the time to slow down your breath, you start to notice when your body is talking to you sooner, becomes more preventative, and then there's not these like ups and downs and ups and downs. It becomes like more like a nice roll. Like you can imagine yourself like just like on a nice float, like in like the nice like kiddie pool rolling around, but then like you don't want to be on that float in the ocean when you're like like in a storm, right?
Right.
And so if we can use breath work and also connecting to ourselves in that way of that prevention of, ooh, I kind of feel a little weird. What is that? Because when you do breath work, it doesn't mean that all your problems go away. It
Mm-hmm.
means that you are able to respond. You're creating the space in your life in order to respond to what comes your way better, right? Oh, I can respond a little bit better to my kids this time. Let me take a breath. That was really kind of annoying, or whatever it is. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
like you're yelling at me again, or somebody emails you at work, or you have all these projects, and you can take a second. You can say, okay,
Mm.
let me be present in this moment. This is what I'm working on right now. And there's this sense of calm. And when you have this sense of calm, it just makes everything a little bit smoother and a little bit easier. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that all your problems go away. But it is definitely a preventative measure.
Mm.
And not just with the body, but, a lot of people say, and I have experienced that breathwork there's this like spiritual or mind or soul, whatever you want to call it, whatever words that you use, aspect up to it,
Mm.
that you feel it kind of has like a sense of like natural euphoria when you do breathwork, when you get done a breathwork session. And so that feeling helps you be like a little bit more happy, a little
Mm.
bit more joyful, a little more peaceful, a little bit more, I just did that for myself kind of thing. Because you're using your own breath. It's very empowering. So there's that other really cool aspect too that can kind of help people pull them maybe out of a little bit of depression, or
Mm.
calm their anxiety, knowing I have control over my emotional state.
Yeah.
I can do this, right?
Mm.
I know I can do this. I have faith with myself, the power inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. One little small step that sort of snowballs into a bigger
Yeah.
a bigger thing. Something
Yeah,
as
exactly.
easy as breathing and tuning into it can
Right.
what that can do. Yeah, that's
Right.
fantastic. Well, as we go through this here, I was hoping, KateLyn, could you maybe just take us through like a quick little like exercise here, that like a quick thing that maybe people could institute in their lives, that's sort of a sort of catch all a little bit, like, something kind of quick and easy that people can start instituting and understand a little bit of what this breath work sort of feels like.
Sure. So I a lot of people think that breath work is just calming breaths. And
Mm,
actually there is a aspect of it that's a little bit more active.
okay.
So I can we'll do a little bit. So I love this breath. It's a 3-part breath, and we'll do a little hold. So
Mhm.
um so what you do is we're going to do a couple breaths just in through the nose and out through the mouth. So just very, very short little thing. Then we'll just take maybe like 10 breaths or something, in through the stomach, up into the chest, and out the mouth. So we're going to do this all in and out of the mouth. So it kind of sounds like this. Can you hear that on your side?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you do is this is called conscious connected breathing, and it's one of the breaths that I use very often, and it is super effective, and it's really effective for clearing, and it feels really good after. And so what you're going to do is you're kind of going to pretend that you're going to like you're breathing into your stomach about 70%, you're breathing into your chest about 30%, and then you're exhaling just a nice soft exhale. So we'll do like 10 of those, and then just do a couple regular breaths. And then, yeah, you can see how you feel after that. So
Awesome. Let's do it.
maybe we'll do a little hold too. We'll do a little hold at the bottom. So a hold is like when you exhale all the way down to the bottom, and then you hold it.
Okay. Yeah, let's
All
do
right.
it.
Okay. So you can keep your eyes open, or you can close them, and just breathing into your nose and then exhaling a little bit longer. Beautiful. And then breathing in through your nose and exhaling. And we'll take one more in through the nose and exhaling. And then we'll start that 3-part breath. So we'll do about 10, and I'll count and I'll tell you when we're done. So just in and out of the mouth, in through the stomach, up to the chest, and exhaling completely. So we'll start together. Beautiful. And one more. Exhaling completely. We'll do one big inhale to the top, and then exhaling all the way to the bottom. And just seeing if you can hold your breath there at the bottom. Beautiful. And then taking one big inhale and exhaling. And then you can open your eyes. So you can kind of feel the stillness. All the energy just changed, and it feels a little weird at first. Sometimes it's a different kind of breath. You know, sometimes it can feel a little awkward coming through the body, which is really normal. It's really beautiful in a session. Usually sessions are around like 40 minutes at the shortest and up to an hour. And when you're doing this for a longer time, you start to notice your body gets into this rhythm. And it's almost as your body is breathing you instead of you thinking about the breath. Like your breath is breathing your body. It feels like it's like flowing through. So
yeah,
this is a really beautiful thing about like a journey breath work. And of course there's a lot of breaths. If I can, and I'll leave the viewers with one breath that I love to do. That was like a very short, just kind of, you know, more of a the journey breath work, right? That we do in along, and kind of feeling that calm and a little bit activated. But one that I love to do, it's so simple, is the box breath. You breathe in, you're making like a box, right? So you're breathing in 4, hold at the top for 4, exhale 4, hold at the bottom 4, and then just keep doing it. So the box breath is really nice if you are like out in public and you're having a bad day, or you're distressed, or you're in the office and you're like, or you're at a party. You know, many people are actually shocked when I tell them I'm actually an introvert. I'm an introvert, and I can't handle, like, it's very hard for me to be around a lot of people and a lot of energy for a long time. So I'll often I'll go to the bathroom and I'll just like take a moment. I do the box breath for a while, you know, for like a minute, and then I just go back. And like, I find this to be really helpful throughout my whole day.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, I definitely felt some of those things you were describing. And the one thing I noticed, and the one thing I love about breathwork stuff, because I don't necessarily use this as a mechanism all the time, but I've definitely slowed myself down, mind's racing or whatever, or getting stressed about something I know that maybe I shouldn't really be this stressed about. And I definitely use the I didn't know it was called the box breath, but something
Yeah.
similar to
Yeah.
that before. But with the the slightly longer exercise that you took me through there,
Mm.
um, the one thing I noticed was that all of a sudden when we were holding at the bottom, I think everyone's felt this when they've like tried to hold their breath longer without maybe doing some of what we did beforehand, or thinking about it being more of a calming thing, that sort of like panic sets in pretty quick. You're like,
Yeah.
oh shoot, when am I going to breathe again?
Yeah.
And I didn't like feel that. I almost
Beautiful.
felt like I could have sat there with holding that exhale for like almost as long as I wanted. Like
Yeah.
everything through here, just like you could almost feel the air still in your lungs, even though you had just felt
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you had just blown it all out. And
Yeah.
uh, yeah, the focusing on all that and feeling that is really to me the striking thing about what's powerful about all of this
Yeah.
is being able to do nothing but focus on that breathing, whatever the technique is that you're using, and how it makes you feel,
Mm.
and pushing everything else aside in that
Mm.
moment. And then there's definitely carryover there.
Mm. Thank you for saying that, and I love that you experience that. That's wonderful and beautiful, and it's really a really cool side effect of breath work, because there's we've talked a lot about a lot of the benefits, right, of calming your nervous system and the emotional benefits, and then the other benefit is that it's actually really good for your body and it helps your lung capacity. And you will find if you do like longer and you do more of the breath, like you can hold your breath down at the bottom so much longer than you ever think you could, just like you just said,
Mm.
because you've like built up that oxygen and that air and that breath in your body. And the other beautiful thing that I love about it is that the breath is such an act, like such a beautiful representation of faith and living in faith instead of fear. Like you always know, I'm going to inhale, right? We always inhale. The inhale always comes, always. And
Right.
so you can just know that. So when you're in that bottom hold, it's like this beautiful, like grounding. You've come into your body and you know, hey, my body's going to inhale when it's ready. And
Right.
it's that trust. And I love that about that.
Yeah. Very powerful. Very powerful
Yeah.
when you frame it that way. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, KateLyn, this has been incredible. I have two more questions for you, but before we get to those two questions, I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find you, your website, social media, if they want to learn more, if they want to reach out and talk to you, if they want to take advantage of anything you have upcoming. Um, uh, I would love for you to give them that information.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. So I'm everywhere at Breathe with KateLyn. So definitely look at the show notes because KateLyn is spelled like 10 million ways and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
KateLyn. So mostly I hang out on Instagram. So Breathe with KateLyn, TikTok a little bit. And also you can find me at breathewithkatelyn.com. So same thing. So anywhere and everywhere, if I am there, it's Breathe with KateLyn. And I do have, so this is airing after my upcoming one. So in December 5th, I will have a group breathwork online on Zoom. This month, actually, November 19th, I'm doing an in-person event that if you are local in Maine, it's in Litchfield. So you can also check that out on my website and under programs and events, which we'll also put in the show notes. And then I always do one-on-one. So if you ever just want to, talk to me or reach out to me and, see what it's all about and ask some questions, I'm always happy to have a conversation, do a quick Zoom. So I'm always there for just questions as well.
Wonderful. Awesome. I would encourage everyone to check that out. And as KateLyn said, that will all be right in the show notes. So last two questions I have for you here, KateLyn, questions we'd like to ask all of the guests here on the podcast. So they aren't trick questions. So don't, no wrong
Okay,
answers
I'm
here.
ready.
But the first one is, what is your definition of strength?
Oh, that's a great one. Strength is, I should have known this because I listened to your podcast. I knew that you asked people this. Strength is believing in yourself and having that inner knowing that no matter what comes your way, you're always going to be able to find the answer and take the next step and it's always going to be okay, even when it doesn't feel like it's going to be okay.
Mm, awesome. Yeah, that's great. Great answer.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and the last question is, what is your true purpose in life?
Mm, I do know the answer to that one. I would definitely say my true purpose is to help people clear, old wounds, trauma, emotions, get clear, find calm and peace, and find their strength within so they can live peaceful, joyful, loving lives that they love and also love themselves.
Mm,
And whether that's through breath work, through therapy, or through anything else that comes in the future, it's always based on that.
mm. Awesome. Well, it's so great to see, KateLyn, that you are living that true purpose, and you found that, and it's an incredible feeling. And all of you out there that might still be searching for it, or just want to get better at fulfilling your true purpose, I would really encourage you to check KateLyn out here, because I think this will help. So, KateLyn, thank you so much for your time. This was incredible. Can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And everybody, I encourage you to check that out. Check out the show notes. And thank you all for listening and watching. We'll be back here, same time, same place, next week. And until then, hope you all have a great week. Thank you.